So Azure Virtual Network. So Azure Virtual Network, it is a representation of your own network in the cloud. It is a logical isolation of Azure cloud dedicated to your subscription. Okay, so what is Azure Virtual Network or what is Vnet? Okay, so let's go to our whiteboard and we'll see what is Vnet. For example, let's say you have to build your VM or you have to build your infrastructure in the cloud. First step, what I have told, you need to go to Microsoft. They will give you a tenant, right? So now you got the tenant. And the second part, you created a subscription. So now the subscription is also ready. Now the third thing is you need to deploy your VMs, right? So in order to deploy your VMs, in order to have a communication with the VM with the outside world or inside world, you need to have something called network. So there comes Azure Virtual Network, which is we call it as Vnet. So this will put a boundary or this will define a address or the network for your infrastructure. Okay, so this is very important. Without Vnet, you cannot deploy anything. Okay, so anything means VMs and all those which requires communication. Okay, so which does not require communication that you can deploy without Vnet, but which requires communication. For example, let's say resource group. This is just a dummy. This is just a logical container. This doesn't require Vnet. Okay. Similarly, many other things also. Similarly, if you are creating a users in Azure Active Directory, that does not require network. You can directly create it. However, if you need a VM or if you need a storage which requires communication with the internal world or external world, then you should have a network which is provided by Microsoft Virtual Network, which is also called as Vnet. Okay, so I hope this is clear. So once you have a Vnet, once you create or once you define your Vnet, then you are good to deploy your VMs. Okay, now very important how we are going to design the Vnet. Okay, so there is something called address space, so that you have to very carefully understand the concept of address space. Okay, address space. So address space is nothing but you are defining a range of IPs which is required for your applications. For example, let's imagine you have a project coming for the Azure Virtual Desktop or Citrix Virtual Desktop or any other workload on the Azure. First, you should know how many VMs you need. For example, let's say you're going to deploy 100 VMs or you're going to deploy 200, 300 or 1000. So then you need the IP address accordingly. For example, if you wanted to deploy 100 VMs, then you need 100 IPs. 200, then you need a 200 IPs. So you cannot do like, okay, I will deploy 100 VMs, but I will have only 50 IPs. That is not possible because each VMs requires a individual unique IP address in order to have a communication inside and outside. Okay, now coming into IP address. So in IP address, we have two type of IP address. One is private IP, another one is public IP. So what is private IP? So private IP is nothing but if you wanted to communicate within your organization or within your LAN network, then you can use private IPs. For example, let's say I have a network. Don't consider Azure, consider your internal infrastructure, okay, which is in on-premise. So you have a VM here or your PC, desktop PC, and another one is here, which is connected to a switch. And there are hundreds of other VMs connected to this particular switch. And this switch again, it may connect it to another 100 VMs in or PCs in another floor or something like that. Okay, so if you wanted to communicate from one PC to another PC, then you need just a private IP address. Why it is private means it is only limited to your organization. Okay, let's imagine if you wanted to communicate to internet. For example, let's say this is the internet and you wanted to access facebook.com. So with this communication, you cannot access internet and you cannot reach the internet. Why? Because private IP only limited to have access within your organization. It doesn't have a capability to route outside the boundary of your network. This is, you have to keep it in mind when it comes to private. Private is strictly to your organization. So now question arises. For example, let's imagine you like this is your PC or VM. You went to outside of your company and you went to your home. So this is your home computer, and now you wanted to connect from your home computer to your office. However, this is not possible if you have a private IP address. Why? Because this private IP address is not at all visible outside of your organization. So it won't connect. Okay. So both outbound as well as inbound, it won't be possible if you are using private. So however, let's say if you have a SharePoint over here within your organization, or you have an Exchange server, then you can connect because it is internally reachable using the internal IP address. Whatever public, it won't be able to access. Okay, there comes public IP address. So if you assign public IP address to this VM, then you can access the Facebook, and also from your home you can access your VM. So this is the main difference between public and private. Public is routable over the public internet. However, private is non-routable over the public address. Public, it is only routable within your organization. Hope you guys are clear with private and public IP address. So now coming back to address space. Let's imagine you're going to deploy at VMs 200 VDIs for your new project. So now I need 200 IP address, right? So I'll go to the network team and I'll say that I need 200 IP address. So for my new deployment, give me a network or IP range. So what they will do, they will tell that, okay, you go and take 10.0.0.0/24. So you need to know how to calculate how many IPs are available from this range. Okay, so there is a formula which is called 2 to the power n minus 1. Okay, so here n is nothing but, see, any IP will come with octets, right? Like you might have, because I don't want to deep dive into network, but just on a high level, any IP address will have an octet, 8 octets like this. So if you plus this, right, it will come 32. So always n represents, in order to calculate n, what you have to do, 32 minus this 32, okay, minus whatever the address range they are giving. So you need to consider this 24. So how much it is? 32 minus 24, 2 to the power 8, right? Sorry, how much it is? 8. So now you got what is n. So now calculate it, 2 to the power 8 minus 1. So which is nothing but 256 minus 1, which is equal to 255. Okay. So you have a 255 IPs available if you take /24. Similarly, let's imagine you have a deployment to deploy 500 VMs. You go and ask your network team that I need a address space, or I need a network range to deploy 500 VMs. So what they will go, okay, you take this 10.0.0.0/23. So now you need to go and calculate what is 32 minus 23, which is 9, I think. So now calculate 2 to the power 9 minus 1, which is 512 minus 1, which is 511. So you will get 511 IP address if you take /23. Similarly, if you take /22, you will get 1023. So similarly, if you take /21, it will be like 2047, something like that. And also if you take /25, it will give you 128 IP address. If you take /26, it will give you 63, it is 127, okay, 63 IP address. Similarly, if you take /27, it will give you 31 IP address. So the list goes on until you reach /32, which will give you only one IP address. Okay, this is how you need to plan and calculate what segment you need. So you can ask directly your networks team that I have how to deploy 200 VDA. You give me /24 range. I want to deploy 1000 VDAs. You go and ask your network team that I need /22 range. Okay, so this is how you calculate your address. Okay, so this is, we call it as address space in Azure. Address space. Okay, in AWS, this is called as CIDR. So the term changes, only the term changes. Concept is remain if you take AWS or GCP or whatsoever. So now you know the concept that how to define the IP address and how to choose the address space. So now we have covered what is address space. Now we have something called subnet. So subnet is very important. Understanding address space and subnet, it is very important in Azure. Otherwise, you'll have a great difficulty in order to understand the concept or do the deployment. Okay, now let's talk about subnet. What is subnet? So now, as I told you, let's say you have taken /24, which is 255 IP address, right? So this is the address space, complete address space in a Vnet. For example, you created a Vnet, and this Vnet is having now 255 address space. Now, in your VDI deployment, after 255, you wanted to deploy 100 VDIs for the production. Okay, and then you wanted to deploy some 50 VMs or VDIs for the non-prod, and maybe some another 30 VMs for the test and development or any other department. So now we need to divide this 255 into different chunks, 100 chunk one and 50 chunk another one and 30 chunk another one. So this is called, breaking the 255 into different portions as per our requirement. This is called a subnetting. Okay, so now you have a Vnet. Now you're going to divide this Vnet into 3 different chunks. This is your production, and this is your non-production. This is your test and development. Now you need to identify, I need to deploy 100 VMs. How many IPs I need? Here I need to deploy 50 VMs, and here I need to deploy 30 VMs. So as per our formula, 100, what is the nearest one, which is /25, right? If I'm not wrong. So /25, it will give you 127 IP address. Okay, now 50, which is /26, which will give you 63 IP address. This is /27, which will give you 31 IP address. So now you need to plan carefully. So earlier network team has provided that you use 10.0.0.0/24. Now I need to divide this into 3, which is first I need 127 IP address, then 63, and then 31, so that I can deploy these many VMs. Now how we'll divide this? So let's do one thing. I will take a first chunk, which is 10.0.0.0/25. I will take. Okay, I'm dividing from this. Okay, this is the main one. From the main one I'm dividing. I'll tell that I'll take the first chunk. So why we need to know what are the IPs it is covering. Okay, so it will start with 10.0.0.0 till we know that 32 minus 25, which is equal to 10, 2 to the power 10 minus 1, which is 127. We know this, right? I'm not going to explain once again. So now from here you need to calculate from 0 to 127, right? 10.0.0. till 127 I will get as a first chunk. Now the second chunks, which is I need a 50 IP. For that, what I will do, from here I need to take, right? From see 10.0.0. So always we have to take one bit one after the last IP address. So 128/26 I will take. So what is the meaning of this? 32 minus 26, which is 2 to the power 11 minus 1, if I am correct. So we will get 64 IP address. So now we need to calculate 64 IP address from the last count, which is 10.0.0.128. It will go till 10.0.0. How much it is? somewhere around 191. Okay, this is my understanding. So the last IP address will be 191. Okay, if you take 26. So now we have covered our production, which is having 127 IP address, so that we can deploy 100 VMs in this. And we got the second chunk, which is having 61 IP address, so that we can easily deploy 50 VMs. And then now we need to plan for our 31 VMs. So further, what I'll take the last one, which is 10.0.0.192 slash 27. So slash 21.7, which is nothing but 32. It will give you 31 IP address. Okay, you can do this calculation. 37 minus 32 minus 27, how much it will come. Based on that, you can do that calculation. So it will give you 31 IP address. So it will count from 10.0.0.193, and it will last till I think 223 or something like that, I believe. Okay, dot 0.0, somewhere 223 if I'm not wrong. Okay, so this will give you another 30 IP address, 32 IP, sorry, 31 IP address, so that you can easily deploy 30 VMs. So now what we have done is, initially we had a chunk which is 0.0.0 slash 24. We divided this into 3. Okay, so first one is 10.0.0.0 slash 25. Second chunk is 10.0.0.128 slash 26, and the third chunk is 10.0.0.192 into 27. So if you calculate all these, all the three, so you will end up in the same 255 IP address, okay, which is the parent range. So I hope you guys are clear what is subnetting. However, also keep it in a mind that you can only subnet or you can only divide unless and until you have this IP, like 256 IP. You cannot see by taking 24, you cannot create a subnet with the slash 23. You got my point, because 23 will comes 512, but your actual range is 256. So this is also you have to keep it in mind. So always you have to do the subnet which is lesser than the parent address space. I hope you guys are clear with what is address space, what is IP address, and what is subnet.